finished. Yes. Actually, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince, hosted by the Liverpool Horror Club. So, thank you very much indeed for coming and joining us, for those of us in the room and anybody who's watching online. We are set up to take some online questions. We will be opening up to questions a little bit later on as well. But firstly, let me introduce Laurence Harvey. Hi, Laurence.
Hello. Hello from there as well.
Yeah, so we'll concentrate. They can see us. We'll be talking to you and everybody, and hopefully they should be able to hear us as well. We were chatting backstage just before we started, and you were saying, when I invited you to this, he said it's actually quite difficult to say what is a hidden horror now in the days of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, even like when Human Centipede 2 came out and I was doing like the press tour, and you'd mentioned films like Society and Thundercrack that weren't available and were ripe for rediscovery. But I would have thought the film journalists would have known, but apparently not. But now you can get Society on Blu-ray and HMV, and Thundercrack's available region free. Or Society, you can get it on Amazon via Arrow and just stream it and so on. There's so many films that are sort of, I think, underappreciated, but still are out there and readily available. I mean, when you initially said hidden horrors, I was going to suggest Thundercrack, but then that's kind of out there and kind of available, or Bad Boy Bubby, which is kind of everywhere, or is readily available from FOP or HMV, and it just gets harder and harder. So then I thought about Song at Midnight, the Marju Weibang 1930s take on it's a Chinese take on the Phantom of the Opera, and so I switched on my Amazon stick, and there it was, free for Amazon Prime viewers. So it's like trying to find a hidden horror is getting harder and harder, and I think Baby Blood just isn't out there. I mean, it is on kind of like download sites, stuff that aren't particularly legal, but in terms of legal streaming and being able to buy a Blu-ray or whatever of it, it just isn't out there. Not even in France.
Wow.
So I mean, you're saying the only version you'd come across was the expensive old out of print Region 1 Blu-ray DVD.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think it's a film that's hugely underrated and ought to be brought out, because I just remember it being really, really impressive as a horror film, but also it has echoes of another kind of glossed over and partly forgotten film, Rosalind and the Lions, by the director of Betty Blue.
Right.
It was the film he followed up Betty Blue with, and it's kind of set. Baby Blood is set in a circus, traveling circus for a lot of the time. So, and Baby Blood has a similar kind of semi-fairy tale kind of feel to it.
It's interesting. So you mentioned, okay, so there are two films I immediately recognized. Hands up, who's seen Society? Hands up, who's seen Thundercrack? I thought that might be it. Thundercrack is a black and white semi-porno, really, horror. I remember watching it at the Scala Cinema at a midnight showing,
I mean, it's a definite Scala film.
It's a Scala film. So the Scala Cinema in London at King's Cross was now, well, it's where Fright Fest started, really. They used to do 24 hours showing horror movies. And I think it's kind of where Fright Fest kind of sprang from. And Scala was known, the art house cinema. Yeah, it's extraordinary. But tell us a little bit more about Baby Blood, please, because the trailer doesn't give a lot away about the plot. So what's the film actually about?
I can't remember. I've just been so ill this week, I didn't get a chance to rewatch it.
Well, let me tell you. So a brief synopsis of basically there is a circus performer, a young woman, and a creature from the beginning of time crawls inside her uterus and grows inside her, insists that she kills men so she can get their blood, so the fetus can get their blood.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a conversation between the fetus and the
Yeah, it's basically Prevenge done 2 decades earlier as well,
Right.
So it's that as well, because and also a bit of the tacky, it's alive kind of thing as well, but done really well and very bloodily.
Cool. Well, as I say, if anyone has any questions or any something, including those who are watching online, because there are a few of you doing that, then Craig is available to pass your comments if you have any questions for myself or Laurence.
But I mean, I think why I chose Baby Blood as well is because there's a lot of like French, a lot of European non-Anglophone films that just seem to be glossed over when they're kind of far better than like American films of that era as well, so.
I think, yes, that's an interesting thing, because of course it's the language thing. I guess, we don't see, either you're going to see something that's dubbed from French into American. They won't dub it into English because the audience isn't big enough, or it's going to be subtitled. So I guess they're, and I'm sure this audience here is quite used to reading subtitles at the bottom of the screen if it's a good film. But yeah, interesting. So when did you first? You said you haven't seen it recently, but can you remember when you first came across Baby Blood?
I came across it through Facebook, so it can't be
right.
It wasn't in the 90s or anything.
Right.
So I think I'd read a review about it when it came out in the 90s, and then somebody reminded me about it kind of in the early 2000s.
Right.
So mid 2000s.
Right. Okay. So the my choice for a hidden horror for film, as you've just seen the trailer, is Hellbent. Hands up if you've seen Hellbent. 2. Excellent. That's cool. It's a gay stalk and slash from one of the producers of Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, possibly, off the top of my head. And it's understandably set in West Hollywood at Halloween, as you've seen on the trailer, and it follows all the tropes of stalk and slash. I've screened it. Our friend Billy Holston screened it at Nova Nights to a complete mixed audience, predominantly straight audience, we discovered, and they loved it. It's just a thoroughly good stalk and slash. One of the reason I'd first came across it, the poster. And I think I can't remember if the moment is shown in the trailer, but the poster is basically a guy staring with the tip of a long sickle resting on his eyeball. And it's like, oh God, that's really, really horrible. And I had not realized this was a gay movie at all until I actually sat down and watched it. I thought, oh, actually, and this is really good because your characters, you like your characters. They've all got flaws. And they're just fun, and then basically they get knocked off quite gorily through the thing. It's just a really decent stalk and slash film. So I champion it. But now to move on to kind of literary hidden horrors, you chose, and I'm going to let you say this name for me. It's written on the screen in front of you.
Edogawa Rampo. It's basically a Japanese play on words with Edgar Allan Poe. But in Japanese, when it's written, it means walking by the Edo River. So he was a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe's writing in the 20s and 30s. He spoke French and read Baudelaire's translations of Edgar Allan Poe. And like Edgar Allan Poe, his most well-known work is Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination. But also he was also a writer of detective novels, as well as the more kind of perverse kind of horrors that are contained within Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination. You may know of his work either through the film Rampo Noir or Shinya Tsukamoto's Gemini, but also through the manga of Suehiro Maruo and Junji Ito, who I think Junji Ito did a version of The Human Chair, and Suehiro Maruo did a version of Caterpillar. But yeah, my favorite story of his is The Human Chair, which I recently recorded a spoken word album for Cadabra Records in America, which was me reading the human Rampo's The Human Chair, which so it's available now.
Okay.
In good record shop. in America though, or on Discogs. But yeah, I mean, Edgar Rampo's collection, Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination, is available in America, but it's well worth seeking out on Amazon if you can.
Right. So tell us just kind of give us a brief taste, if you could, of The Human Chair. Because it's fascinating. It's a lovely story.
The Human Chair is about a female novelist who's got married to a diplomat, and when he goes out to work, she uses his study, and he's got this nice, big, luxurious armchair. And then she gets what she does is she reads through her fan mail every day, first thing in the morning. So she gets she's sorting through her fan mail and gets this manuscript, which is written like a letter. It's a letter written like a book, and she starts reading. It's about a man making a confession, saying how hideous he is and how deformed he is, and that how he, in order to survive in this world, he managed to become an upholsterer and a furniture maker, and it's the one way that he could express himself and earn money. And then the idea came to him to hollow out a living space within a chair. So he gets commissioned by a hotel to make European style armchairs, and he makes one and builds a space for him to insert himself. It's I mean, initially the idea is to rob the hotel guests, because he comes out at night and creeps around the hotel and so on, and then slips back into the back of the armchair for daytime, so nobody knows that he's there.
And it's got some wonderful descriptions of what it's like to sit. So he's sitting there So basically, he says that he is basically the cushioning for. He replaces all the upholstery, the actual padding in the upholstery. So there's only a thin layer of leather between himself and
and this kind of whole perverse sexual sort of element to it about feeling somebody's weight of their body, and whether it's a heavy man or a light woman, or whether the woman's a dancer, or whether she's whatever, or a young girl or an old matron, or if it's an athletic man or a out of shape man.
Yeah. Could you just move yourself a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
I'm just conscious of people. I read it earlier this week. It's great, and I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of the book.
He's got another one called Stroller in the Attic, but the most famous one is probably Caterpillar, which is about a guy that comes back from a Japanese soldier that comes back from the war with no arms or legs, and he's swaddled up and is basically crawling around, and looked after by his wife, who kind of dotes on him, and the villagers treat him as a god because he's lost so much because of being committed to the war and so on. But it actually turns out that he did some rather nasty things whilst he was in the war, and there's a strange sexual thing with his wife, and now that she's kind of in control of him, and she can torment him, and he commits suicide, but it's kind of, you're kind of happy for that. It's a really kind of odd and perverse horror story. Yeah.
Right. Do you read short stories frequently? Are you a fan of the short horror story?
I like reading collections of short stories. I've become more of a fan of short stories since working for Cadabra.
Right.
Because I reread a lot of the because they put out a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff, so I reread a lot of that, and so. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But I think there's something really fascinating about that era of writing. It's kind of horror, but it's not really. It's kind of weird fiction.
Because this is the early 20th century he was writing.
It's 1920s and 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And my choice was the works of H.H. Munro. Mm-hmm. You know Saki?
Yes.
Anyone heard of H.H. Munro's Saki? I recommend them. He was an Edwardian writer.
And any collection of ghost stories that you might have read as a child or had to read at school, he would definitely have been one of the writers.
Yeah, Saki's been collected all over the place. My two most favourite short. He writes incredibly wittily, and a lot of his stuff is kind of. He's an Edwardian Oscar Wilde in many ways, rather than Victorian. He's definitely Edwardian, and he has wonderful characters called Clovis. Very effete young man, and who spends a lot of time with his aunt, and is just very witty. One of my favourite lines of Saki about in a family where they've just lost the cook. She was a good cook, as good cooks go, and as good cooks go, she went. But there are two favourite stories. Are Shredni Vashtar, which is all about a boy who lives with his aunts. He's been told he's ill. He's only got 5 years. He's 10 years old. He's only got 5 years to live. And it's all this thing about he really hates the aunts who are constantly saying, no, you can't do that. You're too ill to do that, etc. And he gets a pet stoat, who he starts venerating as Shredni Vashtar. and it becomes very dark, very macabre. But also the other one, and I'm not going to tell you much more about it because honestly, the short stories are only 3 or 4 pages long. He really is the master of the short story. So his complete works are like that, and the short stories are that, and there are dozens and dozens of them. And he, was great. But possibly one of my favorite werewolf stories is Gabriel, Ernest. And it's all about a guy who's walking through the countryside, and he meets this young man who's just bathing himself by the pool. And the young man just starts making very weird and ominous comments about that he really gets annoyed at the fact that the farmers keep the chickens kept so well, and the fact, and he hasn't had a really decent meal recently, and at least a month or so, and then the narrator side thinks, hold on, didn't a small boy disappear about a month ago? It's really clever, really cleverly done. You're really dawning as to what you're doing. We have had a question come in from over the wire. This is from Stuart, who is Stuart happens to know is the director of the Book of Monsters, which is he's a good mate of mine, and his film's premiering at Fright Fest, and I play a dad in it.
Oh,
I got to that age now. Funny enough, I wanted to say that Laurence was fantastic in Kate Shenton's film Egomaniac. Who's seen Egomaniac? See Egomaniac. It's on YouTube. If you go to Hex HEX Studios, you can watch Egomaniac free. It's brilliant, and if you want to know how independent films are made, perhaps someone could close that door. If it's just wonderful, and Laurence is superb in it. And Stuart says about Laurence in the film, never have I felt such sympathy, for such a hapless character. Do you have a desire for any more comedic roles in the future?
I have a desire for some roles in the future.
That's called being an actor.
Any work. Yeah. It's a jobbing actor. That's it. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do a lot of kind of comedic roles when I was doing like children's TV and stuff. So it comes easy. Or I'm experienced in that. So. I'm happy to do more comedic roles.
Right.
But I'm not kind of actively searching for. I'm just searching for anything. I'm easy.
So, does anybody? You've been sitting very patiently. Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Did I hear a yeah? Or does anyone? If you stick your hand up, if you'd like to. Yes, over there. And if you speak very loudly. What was it like working on the Human Centipede 2?
It was great. I mean, Tom's really enthusiastic, and we had a fairly small cast and crew, so and it was all on digital cameras that were kind of like SLR bodies almost. So like the tracking would be done on a track that was on the DOP's shoulder. So it was very kind of, yeah, it was like guerrilla filmmaking, but it looks like as if it's $1 million on screen. It's good. Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed all the cast and all the crew. Yeah. And I enjoyed being the star.
We all enjoy that. Okay, so I had 3, starting gentleman striped. Yep.
meeting like? And what did he sort of express to you what he wanted?
Tom just looked through Spotlight's, the UK Actors Directory. He, after the first Human Centipede film, with Dieter being tall and skinny, Tom was looking at actors that weren't that, and I'm not tall or skinny. So yeah, I was just one of a list of people that got called in. I think I was the 7th person they saw. But when I met Tom, we got on like a house on fire. When I went for the audition, they did a screening of the first film in the morning because it was still on the festival circuit at that time. So I saw the first film and thought, I've got big boots to fill if I'm going to be playing the main part. And I just got talking with Tom and just decided I would love to be any part of the film. You know, it didn't have to be the role that they were seeing before. But he kind of talked his way through the whole script, scene by scene. I kept stopping him, going, "Oh, that's just like Society," or "Oh, that's just like the All Night Long trilogy." "Oh, that's just like Guinea Pig," or and all. So I felt that it had a very Japanese gore film kind of element to what he was trying to do. And also, I mean, there was hangovers of the references that he had from the first film, which is about kind of European police dramas and Pasolini's Saulo, and that was still very kind of obvious in what he wanted to do with part 2. So yeah, we were just firing off all these references, and as I was firing off all these references and being enthusiastic whilst he was talking me through the thing. And then when he got me to enact some of the scenes from the film to put on tape, he just kept what he was asking just kept getting more and more extreme, and I just did it. And so I was bashing in my mum's head, and I was raping a chair, and all sorts. But yeah, and I had fun, and they liked it, so they chose me.
There's a couple over there. There's a gentleman over there with their glasses on head.
You mean apart from the ones that have? What's next? I've got no work lined up at all.
You're in.
No.
We are many.
Yeah.
You've got some stuff.
I've got some stuff coming out, which is for We Are Many, which is a Hex Media film again. It's an anthology film based around demons, and I don't know if any of you saw Rats, which is were
short film.
Both in this short film called Rats. It's the same director of that doing one of the sections for We Are Many.
A gentleman called Mark Logan.
Logan, who's really, really
who's
good.
also an egomaniac, come to think of it.
He is, yes.
He's also in it. It's a small world.
And I just, last month, I shot the narration or the wraparound scenes for Zombie Wars, a kind of zombie anthology from Silent Studios.
Right.
So,
yes, and funnily enough, I've just filmed the wraparound for We Are Many.
All right. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I was up in Scotland doing that the other week as well. And there was another one over there, and I'll come back.
I was just going to ask, the Human Centipede 3 has quite a different sort of style in terms of the second one. So I just wanted to ask, which of the two you prefer filming, and which do you prefer as an actual film?
Well, all three have a different style from one another. That's Tom's intention right from the start. So, I mean, which did I prefer? The thing is, part 2 had a smaller cast and crew and was therefore easier and nicer to work on as a person, I guess, personally. And I'd also say that's the best because I'm the star.
Of course.
No, but just because it holds a special place in my heart, kind of thing. Because Tom put an enormous amount of trust in me. Basically, I'd done children's TV and a few cable comedy shows, and that was about it. And he made me he put me in the lead role of his film. So that was a big risk, and I'm eternally thankful to him for that. As part 3, I think I kind of like it. I think as time goes on, it's got more and more relevant and seems more and more prescient, especially with the current administration in America.
Sorry, over there. Yes, sir.
Hi there. Just a question. Do you self-represent or do you work for an agent?
I had an agent until about 18 months, 2 years ago. And because most of the work I've been getting had been through friends, I didn't initially try a new agent, but I need a new agent. I need one because I haven't got any work.
Agents want too much money.
Well, most agents take 15 to 20%, and that's that's fine. Because they're only getting that money if you're getting the work, if they get you the work. So
yeah,
like if with my old agent, if I got the work myself.
What is the position at the moment for disabled actors?
Well, there are agencies that deal with disabled actors, and of course there's long-running companies like Kanduko, the dance company, and Grey Eye, the theatre company, that work exclusively with people with disabilities. So I think it's getting better. It's certainly a lot better than it was like 15, 20 years ago.
There's a rumor going around that some companies now, if there's a part for a person with a disability, then the person, if you get a disabled person, can actually do the part, then they would get the job, as opposed to like making an actor up to look like a disability.
I think definitely it seems to be.
I think it's becoming the preferred way, but it's not always the case.
No. So anyway, we actually have run to the end of our time. Thank you very much indeed for your question. Thank you so very much indeed, everybody, for sitting with us, talking. So please check out some of the stuff we've been talking about, because we really enjoyed them, the books and the films. So we recommend them.
Yes,
we definitely recommend them. Thank you very much indeed.